Hello and welcome to the Empower Couples podcast, where here you get modern, non-boring relationship advice for you and your partner to communicate like pros, fight smarter, and stay on the same team no matter the challenge that you face. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman, but you all just know us as the Freemans.
And welcome to 2024. This episode is about how to do the yearly check-in to start off your 2024 as a united team.
So when we say yearly check-in, this is one of 3 templates that comes in our family meeting guide, one of our most popular resources. We'll share more about that later, but if you've followed us a while, you've heard us talk about these check-ins. Now, we recommend a shorter weekly check-in, a quarterly check-in, so 4 times a year, and then once a year, and thankfully you're listening to this right around the new year, it's a great way to either end the year, start the year, or if you happen to hear this in June, go ahead and do it in June too, right? Because it's about resetting. Ultimately, a year can fly by, and we don't want the next year to be exactly like this year usually. There's things we want to shift, pivot, there's new goals, there's new circumstances in our lives. And so on a yearly timeline, we need to sit down together. And you're going to hear us give some suggestions to make this a fun check-in. This isn't like, oh, we have to do this annual business meeting and I'm not looking forward to this. No, this is exciting. This is for you to check that the two of you are on track. I mean, we don't know how much life we really have, you guys. And I know that sounds really serious, but this is a way to really make sure, are we aligned? Are we heading in the direction that we intend to? Because we don't know. Do we have 1 year left? Do we have 5? Do we have 10? Are we blessed with many decades more of life? And of course, we want that life to be together as a united team.
And these are different, by the way, from the weekly to the quarterly to the yearly. So it's not that we're saying have the same conversation at these different intervals. So we have a specific way we want to lay this out. Again, you can find this in the guide to go through it, but we want to talk this out. Also because if you're at all familiar with aviation, not expecting a lot of people there, and I'm going to get the rule a little bit wrong, but it's about a plane will be 1 mile off its target every 60 minutes for every degree that it's off its course setting. And so, well, when you think about how fast a plane flies, it's like every 7 minutes, right? It's going to be off by a whole mile. So it's like if you're not paying attention to being even just a degree off, you end up in a completely different location. And that is to us the difference with the year check-in. You know, again, on like weekly, you're looking at more things like love accounts. Is there anything we need to repair? On the quarterly side, you're looking at the various areas that make up your relationship and checking in on, well, how are we doing in our fulfillment and satisfaction in each area? And now we get to the yearly check-in, and it's really more about saying, you know, we set a course destination, well, likely, right? Most people do, for the year. And what happens is in the year, you get more focused on the daily type of activities or the actions that you're taking. And sometimes that can feel very routine. Sometimes it can feel mundane. But at the very minimum, you're just focusing on completing those activities. And then so it's like you just focus in and then you go 12 months and it's like, okay, this gives us an opportunity to say, are we still on the path for fulfillment and meaning?
Yes.
And those are different conversations than say, where's our love account at? What do we need to repair?
What's scheduled
and so
this
on.
week, like on a weekly basis.
So that's where we want to go here today. And it is about really how you set this up, right? Because you can just say, grab this guide or listen to this podcast episode and say, okay, we're going to do this, you know, activity and we're going to write this out.
Let's
and
have
here we
this
go.
conversation.
New year, right? So you can have that attitude towards it. And it's probably not going to be as meaningful as if you set yourself up in a location. Like if you want to see yourself somewhere differently in a year, we'll go there now, right? We don't do this as much now, but we used to go to like lobbies of like the top hotels in our city and just sit in that environment of luxury, of abundance, and, you know, get like little fun drinks for ourselves.
Go to a nice dinner.
Yeah, say go to a nice dinner and really set up the environment to be what you want it to be as you map out this next year in these 4 categories that, again, we're going to go into here in a moment.
And so ideally, if you can go to a fun environment, make this a little date for you, whether you want to go to your favorite cafe, favorite restaurant, favorite hotel lobby, make it special. Now, for some of us, it's a little harder to sneak away, maybe with kiddos, maybe they're home on holiday break, so that's just not possible. Still make it happen. Do you need to wake up at 5 a.m. like we do to have these conversations? We love mornings. Or maybe you stay up past bedtime and you put on nice music and you make your favorite beverages. Like, make this a moment for the two of you to show we care about us, right? We don't just care about life management. I love the word you used, fulfillment, that we're on track, that we're on path. So make it a moment for the two of you to feel like, we are prioritizing us. And so as we go into these 4 areas, you can choose to write these out yourselves. If you like templates and you not only want the yearly template, but you want the other weekly and quarterly template as well, which we've covered on past episodes, we'll link those those episodes in the show notes. But you can get this guide, the whole template, one of 2 ways. You can get it as a standalone resource that you can get, or you can get it included as a bonus gift when you sign up for our 30-day couples challenge, which is starting January 1st. And you can still likely start if you go check it a couple days after the first of the month. So we'll link those both in the show notes because we know a lot of you like to have the tangible templates. You like to see how it's organized and get the suggestions and tips along with the challenge. So check the show notes for those links. And Erin, why don't you kick us off with the first area, because we have 4 that we recommend checking in on a yearly basis.
And again, not to repeat ourselves, but this is a lot different than what you check in on a weekly or quarterly basis, because it's about looking at a holistic picture as far as our path or course heading. Mm-hmm. Are we still in alignment with that? So that type of conversation leads you to first talk with each other about what are our core values. Now, we have been saying this a little bit more often in recent episodes. When I say core values, I don't want anyone to tune out to think, oh, my core values are family and freedom. And It's like, well, maybe that is, but you really have to understand that your core values are not just what you say. Core values are the motivations behind what drive your actual action day to day. And so you're like, well, what's the difference? Well, there's a big difference. The example I gave, I think a few episodes ago, is I could say that I value family, but if I am really giving a lot of my time, attention, and focus to my work, hours and hours every day, I'm on my phone when I get home, or let's even say not even work related. If I come home and I'm on my phone,
scrolling,
I'm
no energy for them.
Yeah, I'm not giving that time to my family, and I would say to myself, well, your actions do not display the value of family. Now, okay, well, what would it be? Well, maybe you actually value more downtime or more personal care time, for example, hence why you're on your phone. Well, you got to be honest about that, because right now your actions are not displaying that you value family. So yes, there would be other things, like if you worked a lot, then you could say, well, yeah, I value family. Well, you more so probably value security, and the security is an important thing for your family as well. But those definitions by themselves, I bet if you asked your partner what they would say displaying a value of family would be, might be like your presence and your attention. And here you are saying that you value family through going to work and working a lot and earning money to provide that security. Well, another big thing of this is you two as a couple and as a marriage need to get on the same page about how is that value actually going to be getting expressed, let alone is what I say I value actually aligned with the actions that I'm displaying as an individual.
And I know that some of you are listening and go, okay, but Freemans, I work really hard for the family, right? To provide, and I want to be able to give them security. So we're not saying that it has to be one or the other. We also love our work. It's about if you value family, and that's one of the core values that you discuss and write down in this exercise, then maybe there's some adjustments to your boundaries, to your work life, your work family balance. So it's not that you have to choose one or the other in life. It's about how do we set up our lives, our lifestyles in order to actually align with our values. I'll just give one other example, and then, again, you two really discussing, okay, our season of life that we're in, because values do change. You have to remember that. What Aaron and I would say for our values 5+ years ago are mostly different than they are now, right? It's not that we've completely changed personalities or our character, but just our areas of focus, what we want to prioritize, and the lifestyle is just different. And so it's our guide, like you said, for our action. So let's say as you talk about this, you realize, okay, yes, Freeman's were on board with the family one. Okay, there's some changes to make there. We actually really value travel and seeing the world. And yet we've not been doing that at all. We have been at home with the kids or going to sports activities. And in fact, we're feeling kind of mundane. It feels like Groundhog Day over and over again. Okay, let's get back to what we value. Do we need to do little road trips? Maybe we're not able to travel across the world every week because obviously that's not realistic, especially with kiddos. But do we do more little road trips? Do we see cool places in this city instead of the same old routine that we do on the weekends? So it's just a great way to realign your actions. What shifts do we need to make?
Yeah, which is really the next step. And as I'm listening, I can see how those two might be kind of the obvious ones. Mm-hmm. But again, remember, these aren't just what you say. You have to step back and say, well, are our actions together as a team aligning for what we say we value?
Yep.
So there's an adjustment. But maybe the security and the family and then the adventure one, mm-hmm. Those are kind of things maybe you would put on a vision board. So for the marriage, let's say a core value of respect, right? Maybe you've gone through a season or a past year in which, the way you've been talking to each other, it really has depleted your love account over the year. So because of that, there's things not repaired. You're making more sharp comments to each other. And then like in the grand scheme, you feel more, let's say, disrespected or maybe disconnected. Well, you might want to say, you know what, we really are going to set our value on respect or connection, something like that.
Yeah.
And then we might as well transition this. Okay, so once you put down 3 core values, which is an easy way to start.
And our template has area for 3. Mm-hmm.
And feel free to go beyond that. But I would say probably not more than like 5.
Maybe 4. I mean, you can only focus on so many things at once.
Yeah. And I think it starts to get a little muddied if you're valuing like any more than things. That. Yeah. You want to be able to put the adequate time and focus to that. Mm-hmm. So the next part is really saying, well, okay, what are the goals? And the goals being the stepping stones and the particular actions that you're going to take that explicitly express that value. Mm-hmm. So here, let's say we just chose security, respect, and I know you said adventure. Mm-hmm. So if those were our 3, it's like, okay, well now, how are those going to actually play out? What's that actually going to look like in our actions then, so that we display we're actually living out these values?
Now, when you hear the word goals, that might feel like the most overused word ever, and maybe you've created goals for yourselves as an individual, but have you done this as a couple and for this year? So when you think about goals, these are things to motivate you, to actually feel like you are up to something together. And it doesn't have to be comparing yourself to anyone else. You don't have to create a goal that isn't authentic to the two of you. Really, what is important to you from those values, but would motivate you? Aaron and I feel inspired by what we do every week, because it can feel, we mentioned this on last episode, it can feel like Groundhog Day on a day-to-day basis. But if we look at the bigger picture of what we accomplish in a year together, it's like, wow, look at the momentum. Look at what we accomplished. We didn't have this last year. Now we do. Or, I mean, for us, we've got health goals right now. That is one of our values, just to share one, right? So we're reprioritizing and valuing our health. And so we have goals. It can't just be this blanket, let's work on our health. It's like, no. And sometimes it can help if you actually create rewards, or even like something you have to lose if you don't achieve it. All right. Yeah. That might be a big stretch for some people. Maybe you're not ready to give up like your favorite object if you don't reach the goal, but we need incentives sometime. So is there something that you could say, if we accomplish this, or if this is something we really fulfill on, here's how we will reward us. Make it something fun, because again, goals are things to inspire you, motivate you, and really give you a sense of like winning together as a couple. You're doing something together.
Mm-hmm. So maybe with security, for example, again, these are kind of the easier ones, but you might say, well, there's a certain amount that we'd like to save in our bank account, or we'd like to purchase a new home, for example. Oh, and I forgot to say this before. Yeah, values don't change that often, hence why we're doing this as a year. It's not, again, not something that you look at weekly or quarterly. And sometimes that value does persist over a couple of years. And not to get to a place where like you're tired of hearing us say this, but 2022 and into 23 was a really hard impact on that investment we made. And we just had to value security. And so over the past, and we actually have it on the board right here, and we've been kind of celebrating closing this out, but we tracked not only daily, but then we kind of like summarized it weekly. For the last 43 weeks, we were focused on for ourselves, just for our business, to be honest, like where we were at in our business, because we valued security and we needed to put, back a certain amount into our savings to feel that security. And I'm proud of us, 43 weeks straight. And you're like, well, why wasn't it 52? We came up with the idea 9 weeks into the year. That's when we started tracking. And literally on this board, we're doing this podcast. It's right here, 6 feet from me. And I believe the year we had was largely a part of how clear we were on this value, how it's going to get expressed, and that we were measuring it daily, 43 weeks in a row. And I think this is why we had kind of the year we had. And so I'm really proud of that. So that's how you want to start to map the value to the goal. Now, if it's like adventure that you talked about, or if it's about respect, it's going to be a little bit different, but really start to come up with those goals.
And they don't have to be finances, right? That's not going to be the thing for everybody. Going back to the one you mentioned about respect, perhaps a goal can be about how you handle conflict. And it's something that you can still track though, right? So maybe you've used our other resources and you've created agreements for times of conflict. Okay, track yourselves. The next arguments that we have, do we keep our agreements? Maybe that's part of your weekly check-in that you even come back to, but you can make anything related to your relationship goal-oriented. Sometimes it's going to be more qualitative than quantitative, right? It's going to be something that you really are focusing on in the experience of your relationship.
And this just reminded me that there's a similar way to visualize this to finances, but have it be about your love account. So if your value is, let's say, respect or kindness or connection, then your goal could translate down to, well, we're going to actually track the amount of deposits and withdrawals that we make on a weekly basis. We have a board. We'll put where our love account is at the end of each week. And then over 43 weeks, because that's what we did for our finances, you're going to actually look, what was our love account for each week? And if you did that over a year, my guess is you would feel much more connected because you're actually able to track it, right? And then you'll be able to see the weeks that maybe you make less deposits, you make more withdrawals from your partner's love account. It's just a way to keep yourself accountable so that, towards the end of like this next year, wow, I really felt more respected. I felt way more connected because you had translated that all the way down to the specific actions you could take to fill your partner's love account, and you tracked it each week. I think that would be a beautiful way to go about that.
Some people are going, Freemans, we don't have this whiteboard that you guys do. If you don't have the whiteboard, that's okay. Put up this template that we have, put up a sheet. Just even having this is another note I wanted to make sure we said. You've got to have this sheet visual somewhere. It's got to be either your bathroom mirror, if you do have an office, somewhere that the two of you can see this almost every day, because the mind needs visual reminders for what is important. So I just wanted to put that there. So whether it's a whiteboard or just having this template up somewhere.
Yeah, so let me tee you up for this next one. Let's get into the third area here for the yearly check-in, and that's going to be now value to the goals that express that value. Now, it's kind of like reviewing, well, what are the distractions that, if we look back on this last year, that were kind of kept us from fulfilling on the things we wanted to.
Got us off track.
Certainly. So what are the distractions that have shown up or could show up in keeping us from being able to live this out now in the future?
It's so important to do the cleaning up, the removal, right? Spring cleaning, even though it's the beginning of the year. So you want to look in your life and really just say, where do we leak energy? Where do we put our attention when it actually isn't that supportive of our core values, of our goals? And maybe it was things that was important last year and you feel like, we have to keep doing that.
That's
Maybe
true,
it's like, we have to keep up with the pace of what all the other families are doing. We have to make sure that we say yes to every birthday party and every gathering. Okay, maybe that doesn't align with this year's values. And so what do you need to either reduce or eliminate altogether? An easy one that we see for ourselves sometimes and a lot of couples is removing or reducing social media, scrolling, just kind of that time that we can pass on our phones when we're not doing something intentional. Now, we all need a few minutes to check out, to relax. We're not saying you never get that kind of tune out relaxation time, but if you look at your average day, your average week, how many hours are going to that? Is that supportive of being present for your partner, for your family? Could you rejuvenate in a different way that actually is more beneficial to you? So just look in your life. What are the distractions? Could it be that you're a board member for an organization that actually you don't have the time for anymore? Is it that you're on the PTA and you're trying to keep up again with all the other parents and you actually want to focus on simplicity and yourself and maybe your well-being? What is it in your life that if you were to reduce it or remove it would allow you to really focus on what is most important? So it can be time-related things, it can be tangible things, it can be habits. Habits are a big one. Maybe it's drinking. Maybe it's reducing the amount of alcohol that you're drinking. Maybe it's reducing eating out because it lowers your energy and makes you a less energized partner. So
it could also be financial from that regard, right? Yeah. So maybe, not for me to keep going back to this one, but maybe you look at the credit card statements and you look at how much you spend at Amazon or at Sprouts, Trader Joe's.
Some people across the world don't know what that is in other countries.
So let's see. Well, what else could you spend on?
Random shops you go to.
And coffee maybe, right? Like I think for a lot of people around the world, maybe that resonates, that there are these small charges that are, maybe $5, $6, $7, $8 and doesn't seem like a lot. And you do that every day. Well, that starts to add up. And if your goal really is security, you can find these small areas where, these are going to be distractions or barriers that, weren't that big of a deal maybe last year. But when we reset to a new value, you really have to look at, those patterns of habit that you took on this last year.
I want to give one last tip on this one, and then we'll go to the fourth area. Here's an idea for you guys to consider. Take it or leave it. But maybe a good habit you could implement is putting your phone away at a certain time at night, because it is such a distraction for so many of us. I do this, and not only is it great for my own well-being and getting ready to get to sleep, but for your relationship. Instead of being on your devices, maybe together in the same room, maybe in other rooms, maybe your devices are away and you actually focus on being present together in the evening. So that was just one idea. So what is it? What are the distractions you can remove or reduce?
So let's close this out with the fourth area. And this is about, the title, if you look in the family meeting guide, is Ways We Will Be Better. But we also want to include here ways that I will be better. I think it's important to look at yourself individually, because if you're doing this properly, meaning you're setting a new course, and I know we're starting with values, but you could extract this and call it, this is our vision for our life together, then if it is, it has to be large enough, right? If you set these new kind of values and goals, and that seems like you can achieve those as the person you are now, these are probably not big enough. And by big, we mean like, well, whatever is big for you, right? Not in comparison to anyone else.
Progress.
But you have to move the bar further ahead than the person you are now. That means you are not the person sitting here listening to this that will be the one to achieve the thing you're setting out to with these new values, with these new goals, and removing these distractions.
Yeah. Can I give an example about respect, even starting with that one that can feel more intangible? Because maybe a goal, again, and based on your value, is how are we going to communicate in more respectful ways? Something like that. Then you each write, how are you going to be better? And make these not, I'll try, I'll work on it, but truly commitments to each other. So is it we are going to keep our agreements for times of conflict? Like we are going to commit to those like we never have before? Is it that, okay, I promise you I'm going to work on initiating repair after conflicts more? Or, okay, we are not going to make passive aggressive remarks to each other, right? So you need to make them things that are specific to you, how you will be better as individuals and as a couple. And that's the mindset you need to have for this. And we put up a post about this today, that two things can be true. You have something to work on and your partner has something to work on. And if you two act like a team and you both focus on those things, think about the progress. But you can't hold out on your part, because if they're not doing their part, then you're just going to stay stuck. So each of you, what are the ways that you are going to be better? And get specific. So going back to the finances one, because I know that is really easy. Do you need to be more honest and write out your expenses? Maybe you hear your partner say, hey, we're over budget, or hey, we need to be saving more. And you're like, yeah. Okay, well, maybe you need to actually write down every time you use a credit card so that you're more related to what you're spending. So get it down, get it specific. And again, don't forget about this. You've got to put it up somewhere visual so that you remember these things. Otherwise, you two can end up feeling more frustrated with each other, because you're like, we even had a whole meeting about this. We wrote it out. And 3 weeks later, you've completely forgot about it. So don't let this be one of those things that you forget about.
Maybe one of the ways you need to write down for yourself is how you will hold yourself accountable. I mean, if you look in the past year and you're like, wow, I set a number of goals and specifically to the marriage, and man, I just really didn't follow through on them. Well, you need to be honest about that. Yeah. You need a better system. You need a better system of accountability and to remind yourself. So this might fall into the category of maybe you need to find ways to be better in acquiring just new knowledge. So maybe that's more like self-study. Maybe it's around mindset. Maybe it's around emotion. Maybe it's around your actual behavioral patterns, like maybe the time you wake up, maybe the people that you have been associating with, who you spend time with. And again, I want to say that values don't change certainly as often as things on the weekly or quarterly basis, more on the year-to-year basis, but still they can be temporary. And I want to say that because, like, for example, we set our goal of security last year, and I would say we'd be adjusting that value for this year because we pretty much met that goal. So I want to now revise that into, a new goal.
Which we have.
What that also means is I'm looking at the year ahead and we do have something specific that we need to set forth, right? A new value. And it's going to be time bound to say just the year. What that means is you can also choose the sacrifices you need to make in the quote unquote short term, and the short term being a year in this case. But I really need to sacrifice some things, and that'd be a place I'd be looking for myself to get better. What things maybe that I just like to do, but based on the value I'm setting, that's not going to help me meet that. And so if I can say I'm going to set this value, I'm going to really go for it, then the person I need to become is someone that will sacrifice some of these other particular behaviors or things of self-interest that just are not going to serve this path I want to go on next.
Yeah, so this fourth area of ways that you'll be better as a couple, again, they can be individual areas of focus and things we are working on. These might be a mixture of internal adjustments as well as external. Like there might be things that you need to adjust in your actual life, in your schedule, in the pressures that you are facing or the amount of support that you have. So really get thoughtful about this, make it meaningful and measurable as much as possible. So go through those 4 areas together, make this as a priority. Use the tips that we've given throughout this. Again, the templates are really helpful, and not only to get this yearly template, but also the weekly and the quarterly are huge, okay? And again, you can get that guide as a separate product, or the best way is to actually get it included as the free gift in the 30-day couples challenge, which you can go ahead and get signed up as long as it's within a few days of the first of the month. So the links are mycoupleschallenge.com, and then the other for just the family meeting guide we'll have linked in the show notes. But we love you guys. Happy New Year. Let's make this an incredible year for your relationship, for your family. We believe in you. We believe in the power of resetting. We know that some of you are coming out of a hard season, working through a hard season, or it was just like, whoa, that was a year and I'm glad that year's over. Let's make this a winning year. That's my word for the year, actually, winning, right? And whatever winning looks like for you, we want this year to be one that you look back on as a couple and say, look at what we did in such a good way. Like you're proud of yourselves, you're inspired, and it feels really fulfilling. So with that, you guys, we would love to hear how these conversations go. So send us a DM, and we love you, and we will talk to you on the next episode.